Welcome to Flekar and Inspire, the place where the most powerful stories aren't just told they're felt. Stories of resilience, heart, humanity, and unexpected miracles that make us rethink what we believe about courage, kindness, and the strength of the human spirit. Today, we bring you a story that left an entire company speechless, a city inspired, and millions across the world in tears. This is not a fairy tale. This is a real moment, unfiltered, unexpected, unforgettable. It happened in spring 2025, a regular Monday morning in downtown Chicago. The elevators were running, the coffee was brewing, and the CEO of a major tech company, Sierra Brooks, was expected to walk into her office by 8:30 a.m. sharp, as always. But this time, she didn't. Instead, something no one could have predicted happened. A young girl no older than 10 walked through the gleaming glass doors of Nova Digital Solutions. Dressed in a slightly oversized blazer, pink backpack on her shoulder, she marched up to the front desk and said quietly, "My mom's too sick to work today, so I'm here instead." At first, the receptionist, Maria, thought it was a joke. But when she looked into the little girl's eyes, she saw something else. A quiet seriousness. A mix of fear and determination. This wasn't pretend. This wasn't a prank. This was real. Her name was Ivy Brooks, Sierra's daughter. And what she was about to do next would change everything. Now, to understand the full weight of this moment, we need to go back a little. Sierra Brooks wasn't just any CEO. She was one of the youngest and most successful tech leaders in the country. A woman who had climbed her way up from humble beginnings, raised by a single mother in Detroit, working 3 jobs while Sierra taught herself to code on a second-hand laptop. She built Nova Digital from the ground up. By 2022, it was one of the fastest-growing IT startups in the U.S., known for innovation, fierce leadership, and a company culture that demanded nothing less than excellence. But in late 2024, Sierra was diagnosed with an aggressive autoimmune disease. She kept it private. Only a handful of executives knew. Even fewer employees suspected anything beyond her occasional absences and the slight tremor in her hands when she presented. What no one expected was that the illness would reach a critical point just before a major company-wide launch. Sierra had been working late hours, pushing herself through pain and fatigue, trying to hold it all together. But that Monday morning her body said no more. What happened next was never part of any crisis plan, but it's what made this moment legendary. When Sierra collapsed at home that morning, unable to move without help, her daughter Ivy sat beside her, holding her hand. Ivy wasn't just any 10-year-old. She had grown up watching her mom build an empire. She knew the names of team members, had walked the halls of the office during holidays, and even helped decorate for quarterly meetings. So when she saw her mom crying quietly, whispering, "They're counting on me," something inside her sparked. "Mom," Ivy said, "what do you do when someone's counting on you but you can't stand up?" Sierra looked at her with glassy eyes and said, "You find someone brave enough to stand for you." And Ivy said, "Then I'll go." Before her mother could object, Ivy packed her mom's tablet into her backpack, wrote down the office address from memory, and called a rideshare using her mom's voice command access. The rest? History. When Ivy walked into that building, she didn't come with charts or business degrees. She came with presence. And when she asked to be taken to the executive floor, something about her voice made people listen. By the time she reached the boardroom, word had already spread. The CEO's daughter was here. And she wasn't leaving. What followed was one of the most surreal meetings ever held in corporate America. Ivy stood at the head of the long, polished table. 10 department heads were seated, confused, waiting. She climbed onto the CEO's chair, not quite tall enough for her feet to touch the floor, and opened the tablet. "My mom worked all weekend," she said. "She made notes on every file. I read them on the way here. She said today's meeting is about the Novavax rollout. So let's talk about it." The room was silent. Then, slowly, one executive, a woman named Clara, smiled and said gently, "Okay, Ivy. What do you think we should do?" And bless her heart started reading her mom's bullet points. She didn't improvise. She didn't try to be in charge. She just read it clearly, confidently, word for word. And then, when questions came up, she said, "My mom said if there's disagreement, ask Michael in strategy and Lena in legal. So let's do that." An hour passed, and another. What started as a novelty turned into the most productive, focused meeting the company had seen in months. At 12:13 p.m., Ivy stood up and said, "I have to go now. My mom's medicine will be wearing off. Thank you for listening." The entire room stood and applauded. By 3 p.m., the story had hit internal company channels. By 5 p.m., employees across 3 global offices had heard about the little CEO. By morning, the story was everywhere. And that's when things got even more emotional. A photo had been taken of Ivy standing at the head of the boardroom table, tiny hands resting on a tablet, blazer sleeves rolled up. That image went viral. News outlets picked it up. Little girl takes CEO mom's place in meeting. 10-year-old saves launch meeting after mother's health scare. Headlines poured in. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #IfBoss, #ShowDaughter, and #StandForHer began trending. But here's where it went beyond the momentum and became a movement. Within days, hundreds of working mothers began sharing their own stories of struggling through illness, burnout, and impossible expectations. Momina and Mina started talking about the pressure to perform at the cost of health. Companies began hosting discussions on support, flexibility, and leadership empathy. And at the center of it all, Ivy Brooks. But Ivy didn't stop there. In the following weeks, while Sierra recovered at home, Ivy began organizing a small kindness club at Nova Digital's headquarters, asking employees to donate sick leave hours to coworkers in need, especially single parents and caregivers. The idea spread like wildfire. Within a month, the company launched an official program called Ivy Hours, a shared pool of volunteer sick time that employees could opt into. It became one of the most talked about corporate wellness initiatives of 2025. Now, let's talk about what happened when Sierra returned. She walked into her office to find a framed photo on her desk of the one of Ivy at the table with a note underneath that simply read, "She stood for you. Now we stand with you." The entire company had gathered to welcome her back. She cried. She hugged her daughter. She told the staff, "I thought leadership meant never falling. But Ivy taught me that true leadership is knowing when you need help and accepting it with grace." Sierra later gave a keynote speech at a global tech summit, titled "The Day My Daughter Ran My Company." It went viral. She closed by saying, "That Monday, I was flat on my back. And somehow, my daughter stood taller than I ever had." This story isn't just heartwarming. It's transformational. Because in a world obsessed with credentials, titles, and results, a 10-year-old reminded us that heart, honesty, and courage are just as important. Ivy didn't storm into the room demanding respect. She earned it by carrying her mother's voice when her mother couldn't. She reminded us that standing in for someone isn't just about filling a role, it's about honoring a bond. She reminded us that leadership has no age limit. And she reminded us, most of all, that behind every strong leader is often a child watching, learning, and preparing to carry the torch when it matters most. This has been Flekar and Inspire, where stories like these don't just live, they breathe. If this touched you, share it. Comment below with a moment someone stood for you or when you stood for someone else. Because maybe the world needs more of eyes. Maybe the world needs more people willing to say, "You rest. I'll go." Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and never underestimate the power of showing up, and no matter how small you may feel.